The observatory floated in quiet space above a distant colony world, a place where time seemed to move slower. Stars filled every window, and the great telescope inside turned gently, scanning the sky for wonders hidden in the dark. Most people had forgotten this old station. They preferred new machines and faster tools that could map galaxies in seconds. But to one human, the observatory was more than an old machine. It was a place of peace, silence, and endless dreams. His name was Rian. He was young but carried an old soul, the kind that found comfort in things others left behind. He worked as the night caretaker, watching the systems, cleaning the lenses, and making sure the telescope kept its steady gaze on the stars. For many, it was a dull job. For him, it was everything. Every evening, as the colony lights faded far below, Ryan walked through the wide metal halls of the observatory. He listened to the hum of the power cores and the faint clicking of gears as the telescope turned. The sound was music to his ears. He would stop by the dome, climb the small steps, and stand under the open glass roof where the stars stretched without end. He often whispered their names, names humans had carried for centuries: Orion, Lyra, Vega, Andromeda. His voice was soft, but the emptiness made each word echo as if the universe itself was listening. Ryan had grown up fascinated with the skies. As a child, he would lie on the colony rooftops, pointing at every moving light. While other children dreamed of trade ships or adventures in bustling cities, he dreamed of the stillness between the stars. The observatory became his chance to live close to those dreams, even if it was a lonely job. Lonely, that was the truth he rarely admitted. The observatory was beautiful, but it was also quiet in a way that sometimes felt heavy. Days passed without visitors. Messages came from the colony below, usually only technical reports or supply notices. Ryan lived with silence as his closest companion. He spoke to the telescope, joked with the blinking lights on the console, and sometimes told stories aloud just to hear a voice in the room. But on one ordinary evening, everything changed. It began when the outer doors hissed open with a sound Rian did not expect. Visitors were rare, especially at night. He wiped his hands on his work cloth and walked to the entrance, expecting perhaps an inspector or a lost traveler. Instead, he froze. Standing there was someone unlike anyone he had ever met. She was tall, her form slim and graceful. Her skin carried a faint silver hue, like starlight caught on water, and her eyes glowed softly with shifting colors that reminded him of nebulae. She wore a long robe of woven material that shimmered faintly under the observatory lights. She was not human, at least not fully. She looked at him calmly, her expression thoughtful, almost curious. "Are you the keeper of this place?" she asked, her voice smooth and gentle, with a rhythm different from human speech. Rian blinked, then nodded. "Yes, my name is Ryan, and you are—" "My name is Mira," she said. "I am a scholar. I was told this observatory holds human star maps. I wish to see them." Ryan's mind spun. Aliens sometimes visited the colony, but rarely here, and never with such specific interest. He stepped aside politely, trying not to show his surprise. "You are welcome here. Please come inside." Mira walked past him with a quiet grace, her eyes moving across the wide dome and the telescope at its center. She paused, placing a hand lightly on the railing as if feeling the history of the place. "This observatory is old," she said, "yet alive. I can feel the years it has carried." Ryan smiled faintly. "Yes, it is not as fast as the new machines, but it still works. Sometimes old things see what new ones overlook." Her eyes turned to him, and for a moment he felt as if she was studying more than his words. He cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. "Would you like to see the maps?" She nodded, and together they walked to the data room. Ryan activated the old consoles, and glowing lines appeared on the screen. Human star charts marked with names and shapes that had guided explorers for centuries. Mira leaned closer, her eyes reflecting the lights. "Humans draw stories in the stars," she whispered. "Lines, patterns, figures. I have read of this, but to see it with my own eyes is different." Ryan chuckled softly. "Yes, we imagine pictures. Hunters, animals, even myths. It is how we remember the sky." She tilted her head slightly. "My people map only with numbers and angles. Efficient but cold. Your way carries feeling." Her words warmed something inside Ryan. For so long others had mocked his love for the old charts, calling them useless compared to modern tools. But here was someone, an alien no less, who saw meaning in them. He found himself speaking more freely. explaining constellations, telling her how sailors on ancient Earth once followed them, how children made wishes on falling stars. Mira listened with patience, asking questions in a way that showed true curiosity. The hours passed unnoticed. The observatory, once silent and still, now echoed with their voices. When she finally rose to leave, Ryan felt an unexpected weight in his chest. He did not want the night to end. "Will you return?" he asked before he could stop himself. Mira paused at the doorway. Her strange, shining eyes softened. "Yes, there is more I wish to learn." And then she was gone, leaving Ryan standing alone again. But the silence no longer felt as heavy as before. It carried a spark, a promise that tomorrow would bring footsteps on the observatory floor. A voice that was not his own, and eyes that saw beauty where others saw only old maps. That night, Ryan sat by the telescope longer than usual. He looked at the stars, but his thoughts were not only on them. He thought of Mira, the way she studied the sky with wonder, the way her voice carried a calm rhythm, the way she understood what the observatory meant. For the first time in years, he felt something new inside him. Anticipation. The stars had always been his companions, but now perhaps he would not be watching them alone. The following night came with its usual calm. The observatory floated quietly above the colony world, its dome slowly opening as the telescope prepared to watch the endless sky. Ryan moved through his routines, checking systems, cleaning dust from the control screens and adjusting the mechanical gears. His hands worked steadily, but his mind wandered. All day he had been thinking about her. Mira, the scholar with starlit eyes who had walked into his lonely world. The way she studied the maps with care, the way her voice carried both grace and curiosity, these memories stayed with him. He had grown used to silence so much that he thought nothing could break it. Yet one evening with her had changed everything. Would she return tonight, or had it been only a single visit, a passing interest? He did not know. But deep inside, he hoped. The outer doors hissed open. Ryan's heart gave a small jump. He turned quickly, and there she was, Mira, her robe flowing lightly as she stepped into the dome. "You came back," Ryan said, trying to hide the smile that formed too quickly on his face. "I said I would," Mira replied calmly, though the faint curve of her lips showed amusement. "And your map still call to me." Ryan motioned for her to come closer. "Then let me show you more." They walked together to the telescope's main display. Ryan adjusted the controls, bringing bright constellations into view. On the screen, glowing lines connected stars into familiar shapes. "This one," Ryan began, pointing to a cluster, "is called the Hunter. Long ago on Earth, people told stories of him chasing wild animals across the night sky. See, his bow is drawn here and the belt of stars marks his waist." Mira leaned in, her glowing eyes reflecting the constellation. "A hunter, drawn from stars. Interesting. My people would see only a triangle of coordinates, but you humans create stories." "It is poetic," Ryan smiled, encouraged by her interest. "Do your people not tell stories of the sky?" She shook her head gently. "No. For us, the stars are numbers, distances, and paths for travel. We respect them, but we do not give them names or myths. Perhaps that is why I came here. I wanted to see how humans look at the universe differently." Ryan thought about this. To him, the stars were more than numbers. They were companions, guides, even teachers. Hearing that her people saw only cold calculations made him feel strangely protective of the human way. "Stories make the stars feel closer," he said softly. "They remind us that we are not just looking at lights far away. We are looking at something we are part of." Mira studied him for a long moment. "You speak with heart, not just knowledge. That is rare among scholars." He felt his cheeks warm, though he quickly turned back to the display to hide it. "Well, maybe I am not much of a scholar, just a caretaker." "You are more than that," Mira said quietly. "You guard memories. Memories of how humans dreamed when they looked at the sky. That is important." Her words sank deep into Ryan. For years, others had dismissed his work. They called it old-fashioned, unimportant compared to the speed of modern systems. But here was someone who understood. The hours passed as they explored chart after chart. Ryan told her about constellations shaped like swans, lions, and even instruments. He explained how sailors once crossed oceans by following stars, and how children on Earth once traced patterns on clear nights. Mira listened carefully, sometimes asking questions that made Ryan pause and think in new ways. When he spoke of falling stars, she tilted her head. "Humans make wishes on them, you said?" "Yes," Ryan replied with a small laugh. "When a star streaks across the sky, people close their eyes and wish for something. They believe the sky might hear." Mira's eyes glowed brighter. "And do the wishes come true?" "Sometimes," he said, shrugging. "Or maybe it is only that people remember the moment and work harder to make it real." Mira looked at him curiously. "If you saw a falling star now, what would you wish for?" The question caught him by surprise. He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Maybe I would wish that I didn't have to watch the stars alone anymore." Silence followed, soft but full. Mira's gaze lingered on him, and he felt the weight of it. Then she turned back to the screen, her expression calm again. Later, they climbed to the higher platform where the dome opened widest. The stars stretched endlessly above them. Ryan pointed at different corners of the sky, and Mira repeated the human names after him, her voice carrying each word gently as though tasting its shape. "Vega," she said slowly. "Altair, Deneb, such simple sounds, but they hold meaning for you." "Yes," Ryan replied. "They are like friends we call across the distance." Mira folded her hands together. "Perhaps that is why humans travel so far. You do not see the universe as empty. You see it as filled with companions." Ryan thought about that. He had never put it into words, but she was right. To him, the stars were not just burning spheres of gas. They were part of a great family, and humanity was always reaching toward them. Hours slipped away again, until the observatory lights dimmed to signal dawn on the colony below. Mira finally rose. "I must go," she said softly. "But I have learned much tonight." Ryan nodded, though inside he felt the same heaviness as before when she had left. "Will you return again?" Her lips curved in a faint smile. "If you will still guide me." "Always," he answered without hesitation. She walked to the door, her steps light against the metal floor. Just before leaving, she turned once more. Her glowing eyes met his. "You make the stars speak, Ryan. That is a rare gift." Then she was gone. Ryan stood under the dome for a long time after, his heart steady but alive with a new rhythm. The observatory no longer felt like a prison of silence. It felt like a meeting place, where human stories and alien curiosity could share the same sky. That night, as he finally rested, Ryan thought of her voice repeating the names of stars, and he realized something important. For the first time in years, he was not only looking at the stars, he was waiting for someone to share them with. And that made the night brighter than any constellation. The observatory had become different since Mira's visits. For Ryan, the nights no longer felt heavy with silence. Instead, they were filled with anticipation. Every evening, as he walked through the quiet halls and checked the telescope, he found himself listening for the sound of the outer doors opening. And more often than not, she came. Mira stepped into the dome with the same calm grace, her robe shimmering faintly under the lights, her eyes glowing softly like twin stars. She asked to see more maps, and Ryan was always ready. He had memorized countless stories of the constellations, but somehow, when he told them to her, they felt fresh, as if he was hearing them for the first time. Night after night, they stood together by the telescope, tracing lines across the sky. Mira's questions were thoughtful, sometimes surprising. She would pause over the smallest details. Why one constellation had a certain name, or why humans imagined a bird instead of a simple cluster of lights. Each time Ryan tried to explain, though sometimes he laughed and admitted, "We just like to make stories even when the shapes are not clear." Mira seemed to enjoy that answer more than the serious ones. She would laugh softly, and the sound echoed gently in the wide dome, filling it with warmth. It was on one of these nights, after long hours of star maps, that Ryan decided to do something different. He had been working quietly on a small project in the storage room. Using spare metal pieces and tools, he had carved a flat plate, engraving on it the shape of a constellation, the Hunter, one of Mira's favorites. The stars were marked with tiny dots connected by thin lines, and in the corner he had scratched the word human map. The work was simple, rough compared to fine machines, but it was made with care. As Mira studied a cluster on the screen, Ryan hesitated, holding the plate in his hands. He wondered if it was foolish. What if she found it childish? What if in her culture such things meant nothing? But then he reminded himself of the way her eyes glowed when she spoke of human names for the stars. She valued meaning, not perfection. Taking a deep breath, Ryan stepped forward. "Mira," he said softly. She turned to him, curious. "I made something," he said, holding out the plate. "It is not much, but it is for you." Her long fingers reached for it carefully as if it were delicate glass. She held it up under the light, her glowing eyes studying the engraved pattern. For a moment she said nothing. Ryan's heart raced, uncertain. Then she looked at him. Her voice was quiet, almost like a whisper. "You made this with your own hands?" "Yes," Ryan said. "It is the hunter. I thought maybe you would like to keep it, so you can carry a piece of human maps with you." She traced the engraved lines slowly, her expression unreadable. But Ryan noticed the way her lips curved slightly, the way her eyes softened. "In my culture," Mira said at last, "a personal gift is rare. We do not give objects lightly. To craft something with one's own hands and to offer it to another, it is a sign of trust." Ryan blinked, surprised. He had not known that. "Then, I hope I have not made a mistake." Mira shook her head gently. "No, you have not." She held the plate close to her, her voice steady but carrying a warmth he had not heard before. "This is the first time anyone has given me such a thing." Relief washed over Ryan, mixed with something deeper, an unspoken joy. He had feared she would see it as nothing, yet instead, she treated it with reverence. "I am glad," he said softly. She looked at him for a long time, then, as if deciding something, reached into the folds of her robe. From within she drew out a small object, a crystal strand glowing faintly with shifting colors. It was no larger than her hand, delicate and woven like threads of light. "This," Mira said, holding it carefully, "is how my people chart the stars. Not with lines on metal, but with threads of crystal. Each strand bends light and shows positions when connected to others. This is only one piece, but together they form our maps." Ryan's eyes widened. He had never seen such a thing. The crystal glowed as if alive, changing hues as Mira moved it. "I should not part with it," she continued softly, "but I wish to share it with you." "Take it, Ryan." He stared at her in disbelief. "You mean, this is for me?" "Yes," she said. "As you gave me your map, I give you mine." He accepted the crystal carefully, holding it between his fingers. It was light but warm, almost pulsing faintly. "It is beautiful," he whispered. Mira stepped closer, pointing at the way the crystal glowed. "See here? If you hold it against the light, the angles appear. Each shine marks a star. Connect them, and you can trace entire paths." Together they leaned over the console, holding the crystal above the screen. Light danced across the maps, forming new patterns. Mira guided his hand, showing him how to tilt it, how to read the hidden angles. Their fingers brushed once, just lightly, but the touch lingered in Ryan's mind. He tried to focus on the lesson, yet his thoughts wandered. He felt the warmth of her hand, the nearness of her presence, the quiet strength in her voice. The observatory had always been a place for stars, but now, he realized, it was also a place for something else, connection. As the hours passed, they continued their exchange of maps, human lines and alien crystals, old stories and precise angles. Each time they laughed at differences, each time they found similarities. The bond between them grew. At one point, Ryan said with a smile, "It seems both our peoples look at the same stars, but in different ways." Mira nodded. "Yes, you see stories. We see paths. But perhaps together we see more than either alone." The word stayed with Ryan long after. When the night drew to its end, Mira carefully placed the metal plate against her chest, as though it were something precious. Ryan held the glowing crystal strand with equal care. They exchanged no further words of thanks. They did not need to. The gift spoke louder than any speech. As Mira walked to the exit, she paused. Her glowing eyes met his one last time before she left. There was something unspoken in her gaze, something beyond curiosity, something that felt like trust, maybe even the first threads of friendship or more. Ryan stood alone after she left, the crystal still glowing faintly in his hands. He turned it over, watching the colors shift, and he thought of her words. "Perhaps together we see more." He smiled to himself. The stars had always seemed vast and distant, but now, with Mira by his side, they felt closer. And deep inside, he knew the gift they had exchanged was not just of maps. It was a piece of themselves. The observatory had become a place of life again. Every night Rian waited for Mira, and every night she came. Together they studied the stars, shared knowledge, and even laughed in ways that seemed impossible when they first met. The telescope no longer turned in silence. It turned with purpose, guided by two voices instead of one. But outside the observatory, not everyone understood. One evening, after Mira left and Ryan was closing the systems, a message came through the colony channel. It was short but direct. "Caretaker Ryan, we have received reports of unusual visitors at the observatory. Remember your duty. Do not forget the observatory is for science, not personal meetings." Ryan frowned at the words. He knew who they were speaking about. Mira's visits had not gone unnoticed. The next day, when he went down to the colony for supplies, whispers followed him. A group of technicians, seeing him pass, spoke in low voices. "That's the boy from the observatory. They say he's spending nights with an alien up there." Strange, isn't it? Why would she even bother with him? Ryan kept walking, his face calm, but inside his chest tightened. He did not like the way they spoke, as if Mira's presence was something wrong, something shameful. When he returned to the observatory that night, he looked at the telescope with less peace than before. For the first time, doubt entered his heart. Was he being careless? Was he putting the observatory's purpose at risk? When Mira arrived, he tried to hide his unease, but she noticed. "You are quieter tonight," she said softly. "Is something troubling you?" Ryan hesitated, then sighed. "The colony knows you come here. They think it is not proper." Mira's expression grew thoughtful. She stepped closer, folding her hands. "I suspected this would happen. My own people also sent messages. They ask why I spend so much time with a human, in a place they see as outdated." Her words cut deeper than he expected. "So, they disapprove too?" "Yes," she admitted. "They say it is unwise, that I should focus on greater tasks. But Rian," she looked at him steadily, "I do not care for their disapproval. I came because I wished to, and I return because I find meaning here." Rian looked down at his hands. "I wish I could be as certain, but I am only a caretaker. If the colony decides my work is no longer useful, they could send me away." Mira's voice softened. "Do you wish me to stop coming?" The question struck him like a cold wind. He lifted his head quickly. "No, never." His voice was firmer than he expected. I look forward to your visits more than anything." A small light touched Mira's lips, almost a smile. "Then we should not let doubt steal that from us." Her words calmed him, yet the shadow of doubt remained. Days turned into nights, and the visits continued. But sometimes when Ryan looked at Mira, he wondered, what if others forced her to stop coming? What if one day she walked through the outer doors and said goodbye? The thought troubled him so much that he began to treasure every moment even more. He listened to every word she spoke, memorized the sound of her laugh, and held on to the memory of her glowing eyes under the dome. One night, as they stood together on the platform, Mira noticed his faraway look. "You are thinking again," she said softly. Rian smiled faintly. "I am always thinking." "Of what?" He hesitated, then told her honestly. "Of what might happen if you stopped coming." Mira's eyes softened, and she placed her hand lightly on the railing between them. "Then know this, I do not wish to stop." "Whatever others say, the stars we share here are worth more to me than their doubts." Ryan felt the weight in his chest ease. Yet even as she spoke, he knew the shadows of doubt would not vanish so easily. A few days later, the colony sent another message, this one sharper. "Ryan, you are entrusted with the observatory's systems. Do not compromise them by entertaining outsiders. If this continues, we may assign another caretaker." Ryan read the message again and again. The words felt like a threat. Replace him? Remove him from the observatory? The only place he truly belonged? His heart sank. That evening when Mira arrived, he struggled to find words. She noticed the tension immediately. "They have warned you again," she guessed. "Yes," Ryan admitted. "They said they might replace me." Mira stood silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable. At last she spoke. "If they remove you, will you leave this place?" Ryan looked at the dome above, the stars shining endlessly. His voice was heavy. "I don't know. Without the observatory, I don't know who I would be." Mira stepped closer. "Then we must protect what we have here, not with anger or fear, but with patience. If they see the value of what we are doing, perhaps their doubt will fade." Ryan looked at her, surprised. You believe they will change? I believe that the sky is vast, Mira said softly, and even small lights can change darkness. Perhaps our work together can be such a light. Her calm steadied him once more. That night, instead of star maps, they simply talked. Ryan told her stories of his childhood, how he would lie on rooftops staring at the night, how others laughed at his obsession. Mira shared her own memories, of a home world with silver skies and glowing rivers, of teachers who praised knowledge but discouraged wonder. As they shared these pieces of their past, the shadows of doubt seemed to lift, if only for a while. They realized they were alike in one important way. Both had chosen the stars not just for study but for meaning. When Mira left that night, she placed her hand briefly on Ryan's arm. It was a small gesture, but it stayed with him long after she was gone. The colony's doubts remained, and so did his fears. But Ryan understood something new. He was no longer facing them alone. Together under the dome of stars, they would stand against doubt not with defiance, but with quiet courage. And deep inside, Ryan felt the truth. Even if the universe questioned them, the bond between him and Mira was already stronger than any shadow. The colony's orbit was peaceful most days, but sometimes the stars hid behind storms that raged in space. The observatory, though strong, was not untouched by these cosmic tempests. Ryan had learned long ago that space was both beautiful and dangerous, and that quiet nights could suddenly turn into moments of great struggle. On that particular evening, the sky outside the wide dome looked restless, as if the stars themselves were trembling. Ryan was already in the observatory when Mira arrived. She stepped inside quietly, carrying her crystal charts as she always did, but tonight her eyes seemed uncertain. Ryan smiled to welcome her, yet even he felt the unease. There was a low hum in the walls, the kind that warned of unstable energy fields around the station. You feel it too? Mira asked softly, placing her crystals on the table. Yes, Ryan replied. The storm is close. We will have to be careful tonight. The lights flickered for just a moment, then steadied again. Ryan checked the panels and frowned. Some of the stabilizers are already showing strain. Mira moved closer, her long fingers tracing the lines of the display. She understood enough of human systems now to see the problem. We should watch the power flow. If it breaks during the storm, this whole dome will be at risk. Ryan nodded. He admired the calm in her voice. Even in danger, Mira carried herself with a kind of grace that steadied his own heart. They began their night's work, but the storm grew. Outside the dome, glowing waves of charged particles shimmered in the void, painting the horizon with ghostly light. The telescope vibrated slightly as the winds of cosmic radiation pressed against the observatory's shields. Hold steady, Ryan whispered, though the machine could not hear him. He placed his hand gently on the old metal as if to comfort it. Mira watched him with curious eyes, almost smiling at the way humans spoke to objects as if they were alive. The storm struck fully not long after. The observatory shook, lights dimmed and alarms echoed through the chamber. Ryan ran to the main console, his hands flying over the controls. The power grid is failing, he called out. Mira did not freeze or panic. She moved beside him, quickly offering to stabilize the energy flow with her crystals. She placed the glowing strands over the panel, and their soft light merged with the human signals. For a moment, the storm's effect was reduced. It's working, Ryan said, his voice filled with relief. Keep them there. I'll reroute the circuits, the storm roared outside. The dome shook again, and one of the minor shields failed for a few seconds, letting in a strange shimmering light. The whole chamber glowed as if filled with starlight rain. Mira looked up in awe, even while holding the crystals steady. Ryan too felt the beauty, though his heart raced from the danger. Together they worked for long minutes side by side. Sweat formed on Ryan's forehead, his hands covered with the grease of old wires. Mira's eyes glowed brighter as she focused, her voice whispering quiet words in her language that Ryan could not understand, but he felt they were words of strength. Finally, the system steadied. The lights stopped flickering, the alarms fell silent, and the telescope locked back into place. The storm outside still raged, but the observatory was safe once more. Ryan leaned back against the console, breathing hard. That was close. Mira removed her crystals slowly, setting them back in their case. She looked at Ryan with quiet admiration. You did not give up. Even when the storm pressed harder, you kept fighting. Ryan shook his head. Not just me. You helped me. Without your crystals, the observatory might have broken apart. We saved it together. Their eyes met then, in the silence that followed the storm's roar. Something unspoken passed between them, stronger than words. Mira's voice softened. In my world, storms are not like this. But I think this was more than a storm. It was a trial, and we faced it side by side. Ryan felt warmth in his chest, a warmth he could not ignore. He looked at her, wanting to say something more, but words failed. Instead, he walked to the telescope and adjusted it carefully. The skies are clearing a little, he said, inviting her closer. Look. Mira stepped beside him, her presence close enough that Ryan felt the brush of her sleeve against his arm. Together they peered into the great lens. Through the storm's fading light, a comet appeared. It shone like a silver flame, its tail stretching across the stars. Mira gasped softly. Beautiful. Yes, Ryan whispered, though his eyes were not on the comet. He looked at her reflection in the glass, the way the light of the comet danced in her eyes. For a long time they stood together in silence, the comet drifting across the heavens. The storm outside was still not gone, yet inside the dome it felt as though peace had returned. The observatory was filled with soft light, and in that glow, both hearts felt something new, something neither had the courage to name. Mira finally broke the silence. Your stars, they are different from mine. Yet tonight I feel as if they belong to both of us. Ryan swallowed, his voice quiet. Then maybe the stars do not belong to anyone. Maybe they belong to those who care enough to see them, together. The comet slowly faded from view, vanishing into the endless dark. But for Ryan and Mira, the memory of that night would never fade. They had faced fear and danger, and they had found beauty in the same moment. Their bond had grown stronger, like a bridge built under stormy skies. When Mira prepared to leave, she turned back once more. Her eyes lingered on Ryan. Thank you, she said simply, though her voice carried a weight that went beyond the words. Ryan nodded. And thank you, Mira, for being here. As the doors closed behind her, Ryan stood in the observatory alone once more. Yet it did not feel empty. The silence was filled with memory, with the warmth of her presence and with the unspoken truth that something had changed forever. That night, long after she had gone, Ryan stood at the telescope again. He looked into the stars, and for the first time he did not feel alone.